No one at Fort Langdon talked about her, not because they didn't know the quiet officer, but because they were profoundly afraid to. Her name was Lieutenant Harper Blake, a woman whose mere silent presence could cause the air pressure in a room to drop instantly. Anyone looking at her saw only a calm, ruthlessly disciplined logistics officer, someone who kept strictly to herself, filed perfect reports, and never chased the spotlight. She was unremarkable, except for the unnerving stillness that clung to her like a shadow. But what almost no one at Fort Langdon knew, save for a few high-clearance desks in the Pentagon and a handful of specialized personnel who had signed lifetime non-disclosure agreements, was that Harper Blake was perhaps one of the most lethally efficient close-quarter combat masters the U.S. Navy SEALs had ever forged. Her operational record was classified above top secret. Her missions were sealed behind layers of legal injunctions. Her fearsome reputation was currently hidden behind the tedious, boring layers of administrative duty she had been temporarily assigned after a highly sensitive classified operation overseas had gone spectacularly wrong, resulting in political fallout. The regular soldiers on base simply assumed she was just another logistics officer, temporarily pushed into the combat training rotation to observe processes and check boxes. Nobody, absolutely nobody, imagined that she had once broken the ribs of 3 separate cartel smugglers with her bare hands in under 60 seconds. Nobody imagined she had once escaped a crushing ambush deep in the treacherous Hindu Kush Mountains with 3 heavily wounded teammates secured to her back. Nobody imagined she had fought relentlessly for 6 hours straight during a brutal hostage rescue mission that international media still widely believed was a carefully staged training drill. And most importantly, no one imagined she could actually fight. That catastrophic mistake was about to prove costly. The problem began with the arrival of the 3 troublemakers. 3 new soldiers, transferred without warning, descended upon the otherwise orderly base like a chaotic force. First was Sergeant Cole Maddox, built like a fire hydrant, loud, arrogantly cocky, and permanently convinced he was the strongest, smartest man in every room he entered. Then came Corporal Ryan Sutter, always holding his phone up, filming every tedious aspect of his life for a relentless stream of content on his fitness channel, craving external validation like desperate men crave oxygen. Finally, there was Private Mason Hale, the youngest of the trio, perpetually desperate to prove himself, and therefore easily influenced into disastrous decisions by the first 2. Together, they were known, unofficially and self-bestowed, as the Bulldogs. They chose the name because they genuinely believed they were tough, aggressive, and utterly unstoppable, and because they loved nothing more than mockery, especially targeting anyone who looked quiet, small, or visibly out of place. When they first spotted Lieutenant Harper Blake in the base gym, a cathedral of echoing weights and stale sweat, she was alone, performing light, controlled stretches in a simple gray seal PT shirt. The 3 men exchanged quick, knowing smirks. "Yo!" Cole whispered loudly enough for his voice to carry across the main floor. "Looks like admin sent their secretary to the wrong room. Man, they must be short on staff," Ryan added, immediately raising his phone to capture the scene. "Bro, she's tiny. If she's here for combat drills, that's going to be absolutely hilarious content." Mason just nodded nervously, unsure whether he should risk the ridicule of laughing or face the danger of staying silent. Harper didn't react. She didn't acknowledge their presence, didn't even shift her eyes in their direction. She simply continued her methodical stretching, utterly calm and intensely composed. But that specific calm was the terrifying stillness that precedes a Category 5 hurricane. A storm the 3 men had absolutely no comprehension of. The first warning came just moments later when Captain Aaron Reed walked into the gym. Reed was a friend of Harper's, and one of the rare few who knew the terrifying reality of her background. "Lieutenant Blake," he greeted her with genuine, professional respect. "Your assessment rotation starts today. Do you need anything at all before you head to the training field?" Cole's eyebrows shot up high on his forehead. "Lieutenant? She's actually a lieutenant?" Ryan let out a bark of dismissive laughter. "Dude, they'll promote anyone these days, probably just pushing papers." Captain Reed turned slowly, deliberately, toward the 3 Bulldogs. His expression was cold. "You 3, he said sharply, his voice cutting through the gym noise. "A word of sincere advice. Do not, under any circumstances, underestimate Lieutenant Blake. She possesses more operational hours in hostile territory than the three of you have combined. Cole smirked, leaning back against a weight rack. Yeah, doing what? Filing paperwork? Ryan laughed again, a sound devoid of respect. Mason joined in, but his laugh was hesitant and quickly died. Captain Reed shook his head, a half-smile of deep foreknowledge playing on his lips. You boys are about to learn something the hard way, I guess. That tends to be the only way some soldiers learn. Harper simply grabbed a water bottle from the bench beside her and walked out of the gym without offering a single word of retort or comment. Cole watched her retreat. She didn't even respond. She's probably scared. Ryan nodded confidently, lowering his phone slightly. We could take her down in 5 seconds flat. All three of us easily. Captain Reed merely chuckled under his breath, a sound that held immense pity. If only they truly knew the trap they were walking into. The trap was sprung that very afternoon when the Bulldogs attempted to test her. The three men waited near Field Bravo, a secluded, dusty corner of the base normally reserved for high-level, advanced sparring drills. They knew Harper would have to pass through this area on her way to the assessment review room. Cole leaned casually against a massive shipping crate, chewing gum loudly. When she walks through here, we test her, Cole muttered, his eyes alight with expectation. Nothing crazy, just, show her how real soldiers train. Put a little friendly pressure on her. Ryan smirked, adjusting his phone on a small tripod he'd brought. Yeah, I'll record it. This is definitely going to go viral. We'll call it Admin Takedown. Mason shifted his weight nervously. I don't know, man, Captain Reed said. Cole slapped his shoulder roughly. Relax, Private. It's just some friendly pressure. What's the absolute worst she can do? Lecture us? Write a strongly worded report? Ryan snorted with contempt. Exactly. She's not going to swing at anyone. She looks like she's afraid to even raise her voice above a library whisper. They waited, growing impatient, kicking dust. Then, finally, Lieutenant Harper Blake appeared. She walked with a calm, deliberate pace, holding a folder filled with training reports clutched loosely in one hand. Cole immediately stepped forward, intentionally blocking her path entirely. Well, Lieutenant Blake, he drawled mockingly, emphasizing the rank. Where are you headed in such a big hurry? Harper looked him dead in the eyes. Her gaze was utterly flat, a piece of dark, unpolished steel. Move. Her voice was calm, unervingly steady, and utterly devoid of inflection. It was dangerous precisely because it was so quiet. Cole grinned wider, enjoying the power imbalance. What if we don't? Ryan quickly moved behind her, holding his phone up ready to record. Mason, influenced by the momentum, closed the gap on her left flank. They had successfully surrounded her. 3 large, arrogant men, all physically imposing, all armed with contempt. Harper just sighed, a barely audible expulsion of breath that sounded more like impatience than fear. I'm going to say this once, she said quietly, setting the training folder down neatly on the top of the nearby crate. Step aside right now. Ryan snickered, anticipating the next move. Or wah. He never finished the word. The fight lasted 12 seconds, 12 seconds that fundamentally changed everything the Bulldogs thought they knew about command structure and combat effectiveness. Before Ryan's brain could even register the concept of danger, Harper's body moved like a spring-loaded strike, faster than the eye could follow. Thud. Her rigid palm struck Ryan's exposed wrist precisely on the nerve bundle, shattering his grip on the phone. The device flew high, landing screen down in the dirt 20 feet away. Her elbow followed instantly, snapping inward with terrifying momentum. Crack. Ryan hit the ground, a heavy sack of concrete, gasping not just for air, but in profound shock, clutching desperately at his chest where a rib had either fractured or dislocated. Mason froze instantly, his eyes wide. What the? Harper pivoted with flawless economy of motion. Cole charged, driven by instinct and panic, trying to secure a grapple on her arm. It was a fatal mistake. She stepped inside his reach, her movement liquid, controlled, and deceptively soft. Her knee shot upward. Wham! It was a perfectly delivered strike straight into Cole's solar plexus. The sergeant collapsed immediately, folding inward, wheezing like his lungs had been crushed into dust. He couldn't breathe, his vision blurring out with pain. But Mason, panicked and desperate to save face, swung a clumsy, wild haymaker at her head. Harper caught his wrist midair, not blocking, but securing it. Then she twisted it with controlled, efficient force. Mason screamed, a high, sharp sound. As his body dropped instantly to its knees, the pain radiating violently up his arm. She placed one hand gently behind his neck, guiding his head downward, and spoke in a whisper only he could hear, a voice colder than mountain ice. Don't ever attack someone you haven't assessed. You could have broken your hand, or worse, private. You could have died. And then silence. The entire engagement had lasted exactly 12 seconds. 3 grown, supposedly elite soldiers lay incapacitated on the rough ground. Lieutenant Harper Blake stood calmly, her breathing completely steady, not a single strand of her tightly pulled hair out of place. She bent down, picked up her training folder, neatly dusted off the cover, and looked down at the shocked, wheezing men. Cole finally managed to force sound past his crushed diaphragm. What? What the hell are you? Harper crouched beside him, her steel-sharp eyes boring into his. I told you clearly to move, she said softly, maintaining maximum control. And you didn't listen to a direct order. Ryan groaned, attempting to sit up, then collapsing back down. How can you fight like that? That's not normal. Harper rose to her full, imposing height. Remember something very important, she said, her voice now flat and deadly calm. I'm not a secretary. I'm not an observer. And I am sure as hell not scared of you. She stepped closer, making sure the words sank into their pain and humiliation. I am a SEAL combat master. Mason's eyes widened, understanding finally dawning through the agony. A SEAL? As in? Harper nodded once, decisively. Classified operations. Close quarter combat lead instructor. 2 combat tours in the worst theaters imaginable. 3 documented hostage rescues. And yes, I commanded a black-budget SEAL team you will never, ever read about in any report. Cole swallowed hard, the magnitude of their mistake crushing him worse than the knee strike. You could have killed us easily. Harper stared him down. Yes, easily. But that's not what warriors do. Real strength isn't about hurting people out of malice or ego. It's about total control. Of yourself and of the situation. She turned to walk away, but paused mid-stride. Report immediately to Captain Reed, she commanded flatly. Tell him you attempted to test the lieutenant you saw in the gym. He'll know exactly what to do. Then she left them lying there on the dusty ground, doubled over in pain, humiliated for the very first time in their arrogant lives. Consequences were swift. The truth, heavily embellished and magnified, spread through Fort Langdon like wildfire. Within the hour, the entire base was whispering the incredible story. Did you hear? 3 soldiers tried to corner Lieutenant Blake. She took them all down in 12 seconds flat. And get this, she was a SEAL. A real one. By nightfall, Harper's name was mentioned with fearful reverence. The Bulldogs were ordered to stand before Captain Reed in his office that evening. Cole, bruised and ashamed, spoke first. Sir, we made a mistake. A massive error in judgment. Ryan nodded rapidly, trying to look penitent. A very big mistake, Captain. Mason practically trembled, still nursing his aching wrist. We didn't know who she truly was, sir. Captain Reed looked at them with an expression that was a precise mix of deep amusement and profound disappointment. You boys tried to corner a woman who routinely trains high-level DevGru operators, he said dryly, adjusting the collar of his uniform. What exactly did you imagine was going to happen? That she'd ask you nicely to move? No one answered. Finally, he sighed, leaning back. You'll be written up for serious misconduct. You will immediately commence 2 weeks of additional intensive drills. And you will personally apologize to Lieutenant Blake with sincerity when you next see her. They nodded rapidly, eager to accept the minor punishment. But most importantly, Captain Reed continued, leaning forward until his face was inches from theirs, his voice dropping to a cold, menacing whisper. You will never, ever judge someone by how they look, how quietly they speak, or how small they appear to be. Do I make myself absolutely clear? Yes, sir. All three shouted the response in perfect unison. The next morning, Harper was at the track, running laps at a relentless speed and endurance level that caused even the base's most elite physical training soldiers to stop and stare. Her stamina was unreal. Cole, Ryan, and Mason approached cautiously, nervous shadows of their former selves. Harper slowed her pace, eventually stopping directly in front of them, her breathing barely elevated. Cole cleared his throat, his face flushing. Lieutenant Blake, he managed. We are profoundly sorry for what we did yesterday. It was unacceptable conduct. Ryan spoke next, quickly. We underestimated you badly. Worse than badly. We were fools. Mason added softly, his eyes downcast. We thought you were just another logistics officer, ma'am. We were wrong. Harper studied them for a long moment, her eyes penetrating, assessing their sincerity. Do you know precisely why you lost yesterday? She finally asked, her voice calm. Cole nodded instantly. We got cocky, Lieutenant. Ryan added. We didn't properly assess the situation or the threat level. Harper nodded slowly, confirming their self-diagnosis. And most importantly, she emphasized, you fought out of ego, not discipline. Ego is a vulnerability. Discipline is armor. The men lowered their heads in acknowledgement. Then Harper surprised them entirely. I don't hold personal grudges, she said quietly. But I do expect you to train harder from this day forward. If you choose to fight, fight to be better, fight to be stronger, not simply to intimidate or humiliate others. They nodded quickly, immensely grateful. As she walked past them, already resuming her impossible pace, Cole whispered to Ryan, Man, we are lucky she believes in mercy. Ryan exhaled a deep, shaky breath. Bro, mercy is the only reason we are still walking right now. Over the next few days, Lieutenant Harper Blake unintentionally became the single most respected and feared person on Fort Langdon. Soldiers who had once ignored her now snapped into flawless salutes with genuine, visible respect. Recruits whispered her name as if she were a legendary myth. Senior officers quietly began requesting her technical expertise for designing advanced close-quarter combat drills. But Harper wasn't interested in fame or admiration. She simply wanted to train, to prepare for her inevitable next deployment, and to stay surgically sharp. Yet her reputation had grown beyond her control, and the Bulldogs, once the definition of arrogance, became her most dedicated, if unofficial, admirers. Cole Maddox trained harder than he ever had in his career, his arrogance replaced by a quiet drive. Ryan Sutter deleted all of his mocking footage and created a new, popular video series devoted to respecting true warriors and assessing threats properly. Private Mason Hale approached Harper weeks later and nervously asked for guidance on improving his combat stance, and she helped him improve his form without hesitation or condescension. She had taken the three men who once tried to corner her and, through a demonstration of superior skill, had turned them into demonstrably better soldiers, because that is precisely what true warriors do. If you're watching this incredible story on Grow for Justice, please hit that subscribe button right now. Stories exactly like this, real, deeply emotional, intense stories of courage, unwavering discipline, and the hidden heroes among us, are the foundation of what this channel stands for. Now, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And do you want more stories about exceptional Navy SEALs like Lieutenant Harper Blake?